are you? We are back. This is the Taryn Lamb Show, season number 9. I think it's episode number 12. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the Taryn Lamb Show, season 9, episode 12. I am Taryn Lamp. That's me. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I look forward to having my guest on the show. Please make sure that you are listening to prior episodes on Apple Podcast at The Taryn Lamb Show and on Spotify as well at The Taryn Lamb Show, or you can catch us on YouTube at I Am Taryn Lamb. So thank you so much for joining me. Again, this is the Taryn Lamb Show. It still says we're telling followers that you are started a live video. So I hope, yeah, there's my guess. I was like, I hope I'm actually live. So anyway, this is the Taryn Lamb Show, season number 9, episode number 12. I believe it's episode number 12. Thank you so much for joining me. Hi, Carolina. How are you? So let me get my guest on here. Britt. Back. Welcome back. So this is the Taryn Lamb Show, season number 9, episode. Hello again, Carolina. Wait. Hey, girl, I miss you, girl. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Carolina, where are you listening? Are you in Colombia? Is that right? I think Carolina. Is that where you are, Carolina? Did I make that up? How are you? I haven't seen you in so long. I gotta have you on the show too. So yeah, Britt, I was trying to see where our guests were from.
Yeah.
So this is the Taryn Lamb Show, season 9, episode. Yeah, Colombia,
Nice.
the country, Colombia. Yeah, not just Ohio. You know.
Entonces
Or is it
necesitamos
Colombia?
hablar en español.
See?
Necesitamos hablar español, ¿sí?
Listen to Britt.
I
Look at
need to
Britt.
practice. Necesito practicar.
Well, Carolina, you can practice with Britt. You can help her practice. So, Britt, thank you. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Doing good. Yeah, I know, right? A lot of work stuff going on. I know, for all of us. But this is our downtime. There's a little bit of downtime.
Yes.
So yes. So if you were not on, hi Lauren. If you were not on for Britt's first episode, please make sure you go back. So 2 episodes ago, I had Britt on, and Britt is a queer mindset coach. And I had her on because I always, okay, first of all, full transparency, this episode, we were honest last time. We're going to keep it rolling with honesty and integrity and all the goods. So, and I had this episode on hashtag straightgirlquestions because I have a lot of questions about the LGBTQ community that I think a lot of people who are either in the community or allies of the community have questions about.
Yes.
And these questions that Britt and I have gotten over the time, or I've gotten that people have submitted to me or asked to me, or I've just wondered myself, because there's lots of times where you have just questions and don't know who to ask. And if you listen to last episode, if you didn't, go back and listen to it. But Britt, two of the key points out of there were, one, I learned the Q because I didn't know the acronyms or the letters that go with the acronyms, which the queer being kind of an umbrella term. And the second thing I learned was just to ask with good intentions and integrity.
Yes.
And be okay with that. So for those who are listening, this is the Taryn Lamb Show. I'm Taryn. That's Britt. I know we look like sisters, so we're going with it. I think that, now as we're celebrating Pride this month, I think it's a good time. Like, it was a good time to bring you back and, to continue to learn about the community and either be in the community and have questions or be an ally of the community and still have questions. So can you just share with us, we're going to get into the questions, but can you just share with us a little bit about your work before we go into the questions?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I am a queer mindset coach, which means I help queer women, so women who are queer identified, whatever that means for them, overcome the stress and shame of their journeys. And I help them move to a place where they're living with pride. And so this is all about just the inner work that we do and shifting our mind, our mindset, so that we can get into a place of maybe having a very fixed mindset of feeling like, you know, you're wrong, you're bad, you're going to hell, whatever that case may be, of how they've been programmed and taught, to really start to shift them towards a growth mindset, to really lean into who they really are, how they think about themselves, most importantly, and then also how they're going to express themselves to other people moving forward.
So I got out of that. I hear how you think about yourself and how you're going to express yourself.
Absolutely.
So I guess one of my questions is, when I think about expressing yourself, and we kind of talked about this a little last time, and I got to be honest with you, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, some people express themselves. So you said something last time, and I can't remember it. I mean, I can't remember the exact words, but it's something about how you identify versus how you are and how you express yourself. It was something like how you, what did you say? Who do you go to bed with? How do you, what did you say?
Who you go to bed with and who you go to bed as.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about expressing yourself, is that part of that? Like,
absolutely,
being okay with that?
Yes. And those can be two very different things, and those can also merge, right? So there's intersections there. So who you go to bed with is all around your sexual orientation, your identity, who you fall in love with, or maybe you don't fall in love with. There's, you know, I work in the HIV community where men who have sex with men, but then they go home to their wives. So there are different types of attraction. There's romantic attraction. There's sexual attraction. There's emotional attraction. Like, we can get into just even the nuances of that, but ultimately, who you go to bed with every night, it typically aligns with one's sexual identity, their sexual orientation. And who you go to bed as is more their gender identity, who they know themselves to be on a physiological, very gender-based level. So those can be two different things, and they can intersect. So that's why it's the LGBTQ, you know, and plus community, because you can have a person who, for instance, for example, I have a client right now who is a transgender woman. So she was formerly male. She identifies as a woman. However, she's in the process of exploring her sexual orientation. So currently she's exploring her sexual orientation with another woman.
So then let me ask you a question. In this situation, I see him or her out, and that's how I would address her. Because she's dressed as a woman, or she is a woman.
She is a woman, and she identifies as a woman, and so she goes by she, her pronouns. So yes, you would address her as she, her, absolutely. But not everybody.
Okay, go ahead. I think you're getting it.
Yeah, not everybody identifies as such. So it really depends on the individual. And that's why within the community and what we're working towards specifically in like healthcare facilities, places where we're going out in public, we're really working on pronouns. And that's really important in being able to address someone the way that they know that they identify. So I identify as she, her, they, them, theirs. I'm very gender fluid. I've had people call me sir. I will turn around and answer because it doesn't, like, okay, especially if I'm feeling particularly masculine that day, I'm like, okay, hi. And then they're like, oh my gosh, my squeaky voice is like very different. But for me, I'm so just, very gender fluid, can be more in alignment with non-binary, but at the same time, my pronouns are very fluid. Some people simply go by they, them, theirs pronouns.
Right.
So it really just depends on the individual.
And that one is, So, guys, this is the Taryn Lamb Show. We're talking with queer mindset coach Britt here. She's breaking it down for us. So that one is also something new to me. To say they and them, I've been up against that or trying to learn about that. And I say up against it because it's hard for me to look at someone and not identify them the way I see them to me.
Exactly. And so think about it.
That.
Yeah, think about it from this perspective. So when someone looks at you, what assumptions do they make?
I have no idea. They probably think, well, they're like, oh, she's got green eyes, she's light skinned, maybe she's mean, maybe she's not mean, maybe she's got money, maybe she doesn't have money. I mean, I guess they make a total bit of, she's whatever. I guess they could make a million assumptions, right?
Yeah. Like, what about your ethnicity? What do they think about your ethnicity?
Oh goodness, everything.
Yeah.
All of them, A, B, and C. So I think they think everything. And sometimes, to your point, I just got to go with it, or sometimes they ask me, or sometimes they don't ask me, or and most of the time I don't really care. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna I don't get offended by it.
Yeah. And
but rather than ask.
Yeah. But exactly. And for some people, if they're coming from a good intention, a good place, right? Then we'd rather them ask than make the assumption. But really, it goes back to our minds and our brains are very lazy. And so we make assumptions about people based on what we see. And our brains are automatically want to categorize. That's what they do. That's what they know. So instead of asking, instead of coming from a place of curiosity, our brains automatically want to see a person and they say, okay, that person looks like a woman, is dressed in a dress, has long hair, so that person is a woman. Done. Let's move on. I'm going to go ahead and call her she, her, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Possibly not knowing that maybe this person is transitioning. Maybe this person is non-binary. But if you don't have that knowledge, for the people that just don't have the knowledge, okay. For the people that do have the knowledge, but are just being lazy, that's something different, right? So it's really catching ourselves. And this is also part of that mindset piece, right? Of catching ourselves in that stereotype. Because we can easily look at people and make an assumption based off what we see versus actually getting to know the person and having them explain themselves to you. That's a little bit harder. It's like learning a new job, right? When you're learning a new job, your brain is in constant learning mode. And then you get into the job and you're like 1 year in, 2 years in, and then finally your brain's lazy and it's kind of like, okay, well, I've been able to sort all this. So what's next, right? So it's the same.
And then so this is queer mindset coach Britt. She's answering all my questions about the LGBTQ community. So then, Britt, back to your coaching.
Yeah.
So the people that come to you, I feel like this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like you're coaching people how to deal with people like me. Like because I know it's tough.
Yeah.
I know, like I said, like, people come to you in dire needs of figuring out how to get through this thing called life.
You're the least of my clients' concerns, just FYI.
What are their concerns then? What are their concerns?
Their concerns are being endangered, fear of if they go out that they're going to be attacked, if they are presenting a certain way, if they are maybe holding the hands of their loved one. Their concerns are that they've been so damaged and traumatized by the church. They're waking up in panic attacks because they think they're going to hell. They're feeling depressed. They're feeling suicidal because they've lost their families. They've lost their communities and they don't feel loved. They don't feel heard and they don't feel seen. And so it's a lot of repair to somebody's confidence that we have to really focus on and really getting them to love themselves versus trying to, because they've done everything else to try to please everybody else. And now it's time to turn that focus back inward.
And how do you help them do that? What are some tools?
So it's a 10-week program that I take them through, and it's called the Self-Focus Ignite program because we are literally igniting the focus back onto them. A lot of what we work through is mindfulness, is reconnecting with themselves. So lots of work to just get that to that place of reconnection with oneself and one's body. um, Catching their thoughts. That's a huge one, is catching their thoughts, uh, bringing compassion to themselves so they understand that where their emotions are coming from and being able to figure out where their emotions are. So we do a lot of emotional guidance work, a lot of self-compassion work, work with the inner child, and a lot of work around pleasure because people have experienced so much shame and guilt around being who they are, that we make sure that the key and core components are community and pleasure, shifting the mindset as well as reconnecting them back to themselves.
Shifting their mindset. You guys, this is the Taryn Lamb Show, Season 9, Episode 12. This is Queer Mindset Coach Britt. We are talking about just learning, I guess, about the LGBT community. And I am learning about being an ally and how I can best do that and answering all my questions. And Britt just shared with us a little bit about her coaching and her work. And so, Britt, I can imagine, I know you said your work is 10 weeks long. Mm-hmm. But what I hear you saying before that is this work is never ending.
Oh, yeah.
For your clients, right? Maybe out there in the real world, like after they leave you, and if someone was listening is going to listen to this 6 weeks from now, and they're kind of not working with anyone, but out there in the real world, what are some things maybe that you could tell them to kind of take with them to say, hey, like work through these things, or what do you tell them after? Because you're 10 weeks, then they go out into the real world.
Oh, you'd be amazed what happens in 10 weeks. I see, and that's the beauty of coaching, is it is results driven and it is transformational. So my clients do not leave after 10 weeks.
Okay.
They're still a part of the community.
I didn't think they were going, because I'm like thinking to myself, like, and the real world is like, yeah, I say the real world, but you know what I mean? Like after 10 weeks, it's kind of like you were saying, right? Like you can't just leave. It's like,
I mean, you can. You absolutely, like, if you feel like, and I had one client, and this was prior to working with the LGBTQ plus community, but I had one client who took it and completely transformed and was able to take it and run with it. Most people know that's not going to be the case. However, when I started community calls, even that client came back. And so the community is there and it's open because we all need community, whether you're queer or an ally. This client is an ally and still came back to my calls, which was now predominantly LGBTQ plus people, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not to say that the work is done. It's to say, if you feel like you have the tools and you can move beyond this and move beyond me, by all means. And if not, we have another level where we can take you to. So 2.5 months, I know transformation can happen. If you think about creating a habit, it takes 30 days to create a habit. Beyond that, beyond those 30 days, now we're creeping into the place where we're wanting to maintain that habit and sustain that. So my job is to get you, like, say you're going to the gym, right? You're going to create that habit, then you're going to maintain it and sustain it. So 2.5 months, you can actually do that. And then beyond that, we can start talking about what do you want to see for yourself beyond that point. But first, we got to get you out of that depression, that anxiety.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to focus. And that typically takes about 2.5 months to even get them over that hump.
And I guess now that I'm, thinking about it, I guess, you meet people along the way, right? And so you have support. You have, to your point, you have community, because I just think the world is cruel, right? So when you start, thinking about it, you're like, you need people to help you along in this wild west,
You do. And part of it too that I see, because I've always come from the opposite perspective, is how we focus is what's going to come to us, right? So the work that I teach is all about where we're putting our focus, because if we're putting our focus on the cruelty in the world, that's going to be reflected back to us. we're putting our focus on people that are supportive, people that are in maybe of the same mindset, are, compassionate towards us, then that's what's also going to come back to us. So that is a thread throughout my program and what I teach, and how my clients really start to get results for themselves.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's so important. I just think like coming out of it or in it, or, having the community, having a support system. One of the things when I look at your Instagram, you always make me laugh, first of all. But what you make me think about is, after your work you put in, because I'm going with you put in work yourself. I'm going with that. I'm imagining that you put in work with yourself based off of what I know of you and what I see of your social. You give people the happiness on the other side.
Yes.
That you can come out on the other side cheerful. You have posts about coming out to your family. You have posts about different things. I think that was one that probably got to me when I saw, coming out to you. I think it was like the first time you told your grandma, or when you told your grandma, or something like that. So I think that is important. How do you figure, I guess people get there at different times, at different ways. And are there people who don't ever get there?
Yes. Yeah. It's different. It's different for everybody, and you have to be ready. And if you think about, I was one of those people that almost did not get there. I was suicidal. I mean, every chance I got, I was back attempting suicide again. I think that you were there. That's what my TED Talk was on, right? And so when we did the TEDx, that was about the number of times I attempted suicide, almost not getting to that other side, because I didn't think that there was another side. I didn't believe it. And I had to learn first that, what is a belief? A belief is a thought that I keep thinking. And so that took work on myself. That took a belief in myself to shift that framework for myself in order to even start taking those steps. So yes, there are people that get there in a variety of ways, and there are people that never get there. There are people that are still walking this earth, and that's my job. I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
Where are you? And how do I pull you in to show you that you are loved and you are enough? That's if I can drill that into every single queer person, whoever they are, however they identify, that like that the mission has called me and I'm on it. Like, how do we get there?
That would be your message.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, you're loved. Let's get to the other side.
Yeah, and you are enough. Now let's get you there so you can believe it too.
Now, what can allies do to do better? Here's a question for you, Carolina. Does asking everyone to use their pronouns help promote inclusion? Is the key to be respectful and open in all perspectives? Is the key to tell we are? Yeah, I think she's saying. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I think you got.
Yeah. So I think yes, and so in inclusive spaces, the great thing about people being more inclusive, and it's almost like that. We were talking about this on a call I had today, when we were creating some content, to have some of these conversations. And one of the questions was around healthcare providers. How can healthcare providers be more inclusive and celebrate people versus just tolerating them? And one of the answers was, you can just ask people their pronouns. You can ask everybody. You know who the people are that are actually offended by you asking their pronouns?
Who?
Cisgender people who are born in alignment with the gender.
I was going to say people like me.
Born. Yeah. So if you were born in your gender, you were born woman and you align with woman, you were born man and you align with male, that's what was given you at birth, that was your biological gender. They're the ones that are most offended, mostly because they don't know. They don't know the lingo, they don't know the language. And so they're like, well, what does that mean? So those are the only people that have ever gotten offended, ever. But if we're asking everybody, it's actually a quick opportunity just for a quick teachable moment. And that's what I used to teach when I did these trainings.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't feel like I get asked, but I don't get offended by it.
Yeah.
But I'm how it would be I call it, a straight thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I can imagine, but yeah, I mean, so is that, so does asking everyone their pronouns help to promote inclusion?
It
That's
does.
fair.
It does. Yeah. If you're asking everybody, it's sort of like what we used to talk about when I was in the HIV space. If you can give everybody, ask everybody if they want an HIV test, we're not singling any one person out. We're not singling any population out. It's all inclusive at that point. So it's easy to just say, like the way that that I used to teach it, I'd say, hey, my name is Britt. I go by she, her, they, them pronouns. What's your name and how would you like me to address you?
Oh, okay. That's a fair question. And okay, so then this is a good question. So if you ask me that, and I said, well, my name is Taryn and I go by she, that's what I would say?
Yep.
She, her?
Yep.
She?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Would I say she, her?
Either one. You could say both, or you can just say one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't get asked that. Would I get nice advice? Thanks. Yes, nice advice. I actually just get asked, am I gay?
Mm-hmm.
Or people might think that I'm gay.
Yeah.
But again, they don't ask me, but I don't get offended by it either way. So,
yeah.
It is what it is. But, and it's interesting you say about that now that I'm sitting back and I'm talking to you about it, because, people look and they think, well, she must be gay.
Mm-hmm.
She has
short hair.
Yeah, she looks like Britney. You know what I mean? So they must be gay together.
Yeah, right.
But again, I don't get offended by it because what's there to be offended by it? But it's kind of like you were saying, like, then I have to think about it from the other way. Like, what am I assuming about someone else on the other end? And
exactly.
if that happens to me, I don't get offended. So the good thing is hopefully they don't get offended, but hopefully I know to now answer the question so that I don't misspeak or think one way or, think something else, right?
Yeah.
Or either that or don't get offended by them correcting me.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
that's the other part, right?
Yeah.
Like I think there's part of it that says when someone does tell you, then be cool with it, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's okay. I'm going to tell you. So what other things as allies can we do? I like that question by Carolina. What other things can we do to either help promote inclusivity? I think that's the word, or just be better allies. Just be better allies. And how can we learn? Like now I feel like I have you, but how can I learn? How can we learn if someone's listening? How can they learn if they don't have a Brit in their world?
Yeah. I think, in order to be a better ally, I think it starts with these conversations and that openness. And no, not everybody does have a Brit like me, but I think it helps when we can have inclusive conversations. And the way I always think about just change in this world in general is we have to have allies in order to make change. And so even, politically, just think about like the political landscape. And if we think about the civil rights movement, it was through the efforts of people of color that we were able to get laws passed, and it was through the efforts of allies. If we think about Black Lives Matter, it was people of color and allies. So when we think about the LGBTQ movement, it's been the same thing. It's been the queer folks, LGBTQ people, and allies coming together to finally say enough is enough. Like, we know that treating other people is wrong. Treating other people poorly, being mean, whatever is wrong. It's, like, people are people, allow people to be people. So I think a huge part of that is also just speaking up. Like, I have one of my coach friends, and the first time I got like a negative comment, like a really mean comment on my Instagram when I came out, because that was the number one thing I was nervous about when I came out as a queer coach. And it happened as soon as I announced it. And she came to me and she said, you know what? They just said something mean to you, but I'm going to tell them. And she's just like, go. And I had to almost stop her. And I was like, hey, Like, and I appreciated it because she was riled up and ready to speak up for me. And so it's not to say that we have to speak up for other people, but it was that intention of thank you for having my back. Because that first comment was hard. The first 2 to 5 comments were really hard. I was like having anxiety myself. And now I get them and I'm just like, and I laugh. Sometimes I respond. Sometimes I just delete them because it's like whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, it's knowing that a person has your back no matter what. And to me, that's what being an ally is. And it could mean that, hey, I may not fully understand.
Yeah.
I may not fully know. I may not even know all the lingo. But I have your back no matter what.
Yeah. Well, that is me. I don't know half of what I should know. I am not even going to lie. This is the Taryn Lamb Show, guys. We are talking to queer mindset coach Britt. She is answering all the questions about the LGBTQ community. Now, she's not answering all the questions because there's a lot of them, but she's answering some we got in a half an hour. Mostly mine. But you know, I do like see that, right? Like, I don't know any, I don't know half the answers, you know, because I got to admit, when I see people and I don't know how to address them sometimes, I don't know what to say. I don't know if I'm offending them. I don't know, you know, I know where my heart is. And I think that goes a long way.
It
does. And the people that I know that are part of the community, I do think that I do a good job of asking, you know, the questions, or, you know, just learning.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us have all the answers, right?
We don't. And that's even I don't have all the answers. I had somebody in DMs that said they were, I forget how they identified the other day. And I just had to ask, I said, you know what, I'm not familiar with that. What does that mean? It's because I think I talked about this last time, is language is always evolving. And the reason we didn't have this language before is because we didn't have this language before.
Uh-oh. You're silent. You broke up. There you are. You're back. Yeah, you're back. Yeah, we didn't have this language before, is the last thing I heard.
Yeah, so we didn't have the language. Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So we didn't have the language that we have today. Language is always evolving. And so when I talk to people, like one of my friends who recently transitioned from female to male, that was one of the things that he told me. He said, Britt, I didn't have this language back then. Yeah. I didn't know. I just thought I was a butch lesbian. That's what I thought. And it really wasn't.
She transitioned into a man.
Yes.
And then she thought she was a lesbian. Okay, got it.
Before she was a lesbian, when she was she was a lesbian, and she thought she was a very masculine lesbian at that time, until he got into his 50s and realized I'm actually a man. Because he didn't know, he didn't have the language, he didn't have the knowledge at that point. And we're seeing that with a lot of people. And then you have like our younger generation that's coming up, Gen Z. And I mean, they are just so self-aware and creating a new set of lingo, new language, that every generation is going to have different words that they use, different language. And so we're ever evolving. Queer was not acceptable in, like my wife's generation, queer was not acceptable. We say queer now.
This is a tough question.
Yeah.
And I've heard this one. And I don't know how else to say it, so it's not going to come out right. Okay. So I've heard this one by the cisgender community. How do you say that you're a woman or a man if the body parts you have are of the other one?
Are we looking at their body parts?
I'm just, that's the question on the tip. Like, are you saying that it's not just body?
It's not body part. It is who they know themselves to be. And a lot of times Gender is formed a lot of times before kids can even talk. They know their gender. They know their gender identity. So they're forming their gender around 2 to 3. If they feel like they've been born in the wrong body, they will express that before they know their sexual orientation, before they know anything, before they have a language, they will start to express themselves very early on. There's a lot of research around that. And so this isn't just like a new age, hey, this is sort of the new cool thing. This has always been out there. And not only that, but if we just outside of modern culture, if we go back to like Native American tribes, people who were transgender, or as they call two-spirit, were actually celebrated. This has gone back in history. This is historical. It just became suppressed when we introduced things like Christianity, when we were colonized in the United States, and I'm sure other countries as well, where this was actually suppressed in people. But this has always been out there. It's always been the case, and it's never had anything to do with body parts. And if we think about it right now, not everybody has the luxury or not everybody wants to change their body parts. And not everybody has the access to doing that either.
But that's the question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because that's what people, again, want to focus on, is what can I see, right? So if I can see, or if I know that maybe you've changed your body parts, then only then can you not be a woman anymore. Only then can you then say you're a man. But again, it's going deeper than what's at face value, what we can see, hear, touch, taste. It's much deeper than that.
I think that's a good one for allies to hear, like, because I that's a transparent question that I've heard a million times. I, again, don't really think about it so much, but I know that people do.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, because what's the answer? Because I don't have the answer. I didn't know it. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I forgot where we were talking about. When you said that, though, I was like, you know what?
How language is evolving. Yeah. We were talking about that. Yeah.
Gentleman said, I think it was a gentleman, said, he didn't have that language back then, right? Yep. He didn't know, what to say.
Yeah.
And I think the language is continuously evolving. The space of learning about it is continuously evolving. And I think there's always going to be, the goods, the bads, and the uglies. Hopefully we get more, or we start to get, because one thing I've learned, and this can be about anything, is you don't have to know about it or be about it. I think sometimes people think, like, I wonder if people think, like, if you're an ally, is it, it doesn't mean that I am gay. No. It means I'm an ally.
Yeah. It means I support people for who they are.
I wonder if people think that, you know what I mean? It's like, like, because I used to live in LA, I think, and, I lived in West Hollywood. So I was out all the time. And I was like, what, I don't know. Like, there's so many bigger fish to fry. And I need to worry about my own self. You know what I mean? Like, I got the last time I checked, I haven't met a perfect person on this earth yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got to worry about what's going on for me in my household, and I know that my job is to be kind and to serve.
Exactly.
Because if I had all the answers, that would be a whole different story, right? But and I'm a Christian. I am taught to serve and love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the true basis of Christianity.
Difficult topic you've mentioned on language. In Spanish, the proper grammar makes it difficult to show we're inclusive sometimes. I'm an ally, and also on and a strict language usage person.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even shifting in And so right now, like, that's been a conversation in the community when it comes to grammar and usage in other languages too. And even that's being reclaimed, and that language is also evolving. So it used to be called the Latino community or Latina, and now it's Latinx community. And so even that language is starting to shift, and it's never going to be perfect, right? It's as with anything, we're never going to be perfect. Language is never going to be perfect, and some people adopt Latinx who are in the LGBTQ plus community. Some people don't. So everybody's different, and I think that's the beauty of it all, is that everybody is different, and it's just respecting people where they are, and also realizing that nothing is binary, nothing is this or that. And I think that's what we forget in this world is, I think, especially, I can't speak for other cultures in other countries, but I know in the United States, it's like you have to be for or against, you have to be pro or anti, you have to be, male or female. It's like, well, you're missing so many other people. What about intersex people? What about people that are biologically born with both parts, or a mixture of chromosomes? There are so many ways you can be intersex. And yet we're so focused on this black and white, this or that, pro or against, that we're missing all the beauty in between, because we're so focused on these polarized ends of the stick. And with social media and watching, all of this chaos, especially politically right now, it's making us even more polarized. Mm-hmm. Instead of just saying, you're human, I'm human, we're all human. None of us are perfect, and yet all of us are perfect the way we are.
So, hey, Urs, how you doing, girl? We are, this is Britt, Queer Mindset Coach. So it's so funny. So Ursula is a friend of mine from, I think I'm having a hot flash right now. Ursula and I are friends from college. Mm-hmm. And we are, okay, you're going to giggle at this, Britt. So we have this picture, I'll have to send it to you. We have a friend who got married. And so when Ursula and I go out, consistently I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and Ursula is dressed up. Mm-hmm. People consistently think we're married. Like, oh my God. From probably 30 years, they think we're married. And both of us have separate partners. And so we always get all the time, we have the best picture. It looks like we are a married couple standing up in a wedding. I girl with short hair and a pantsuit, and she is a girl with longer hair. She has long, had like a little bob and a dress, and people were like, those two are married.
And I'm your sister-in-law. Hi.
And and you're my twin. You're my twin sis. So that's the story of that. Like how we, literally all the time we get it, like everywhere we go, because I'm consistently in jeans and sweatpants and sneakers, which is so, I know the typical, thought. But Urs, if you have any questions, let us know. Britt answered a lot of my straight girl questions, but most importantly, he's kind of teaching us how to. Are you asking to come in, Urs? I don't know. I can't tell. Let me see if I can get you in here, Urs. If you have any questions for Britt. Ursula, are you asking to come in here, or no? Did you mean to do that, Urs?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Look at Britt. Don't we look like twins?
I know. Oh, hey sis, what's up? I see you've met my wife.
Yes. It's a great conversation on assumption, so this is perfect timing.
It's so true, because literally, like, even so, just in October, so we travel together a lot. Uh-huh. So in October we went to Zion National Park, and in Utah, and we did this like crazy hike, and we did everything together. We stayed in the tent together and stuff. And so we met up with this male-female couple that we were walking with on the hike, and they're like, so are you guys like together? Because like we literally finish each other's sentences, like we know everything. We've known each other for like 32 years. It's like we're so close. And it's like, no, it is possible to have female friendships and not, but it's just funny because they're like, and sometimes we're just like, whatever,
Whatever, we start explaining it,
whatever works for you, whatever works for you, that's what we are.
Yeah.
Urs, do you have any questions for Britt? Or I know I put you on the spot.
I
So
do. No. I was on a work call and I told Taryn I had a question, and it was too long-winded to text. So I'm glad you guys are still on. So I wanted
sorry, Britt, we're going over a little bit. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry, Britt.
yeah.
Oh, you're
So
good.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this. So I have a friend. Let's call her Kay. And she's been my friend for 8 years, and she's one of my mom friends. So in 2016, so my daughter was born in 2013, started daycare. So in 2016, I bonded with this group of like 5 or 6 moms, and our kids are the same age. So we, just had a lot in common and all that. So fast forward to 2020, she comes over and tells me, so she has 2 boys with her ex-husband now. She comes over to tell me that she's getting a divorce. She's also been having an affair and having an affair with a female. And I'm just like, okay, cool. Whatever. You like it. I love it. I just want you to be happy because her husband was abusive and all these things. So it was a terrible situation. So now she's her and this other woman who was also married to a man, and they have a child. So now they have found each other, married, and they're essentially living happily ever after. They've moved in together, their kids, they're sharing custody with their exes and all that. So with some of my other mom friends, and even she and I talk about it too, is like, so she defines herself as part of the lesbian community, but my understanding, I personally don't think she's a lesbian. I think she's in love with her wife, and she's an amazing person in who she is, but I don't think she's necessarily like attracted to women, like in general, because she's always dated men before. And I could be wrong because she's in her 40s and all that, so, and I know there's a lot of things that go into identifying who you are and your family and things like that. So, but an interesting thing she told me is that when her and her wife go to different events or like lesbian or LGBTQ focused events, that they really don't fit in with the other lesbian couples because they were married to men and had children with them, and you've had sex with men, so you're not one of us, you guys are just whatever. And so obviously luckily they have each other, but I'm just wondering, like, how does the community view that? Because we accept her and love her no matter what. She's Kay, whatever, like she's our girl. And but she was just saying how it's just kind of awkward because they went to this one concert where it was mostly like, it was headlined by a lot of women and like lesbian identified like musicians and things like that. But people were just like, oh, you have children? Did you actually have them? Or did you sleep with someone to get them? And so I'll just pause there. But I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts because I just find it kind of interesting.
This is my favorite question, so thank you.
Okay.
So
both of you, we're like, put you both on the spot. Like,
yes. So first, before we address that piece, so the component about her being a lesbian. So as far as how she identifies is how she identifies. So if she says she is a lesbian, we just take that she is a lesbian.
Okay.
Because that is her identity. It doesn't matter who she was with before then. It doesn't matter anything. If that is her identity, that is her identity. And just as we talked about language evolving, so do identities, right? So she was a straight woman at one point. Now she's a lesbian, and if that's how she identifies. If she doesn't identify that way, then that's not what she is, right? That's not who she is. And so the interesting thing is a lot of my clients come out of marriages or previous relationships with men, or they're in current relationships with men, and I'm connecting with people that potentially want to get out because they're making some realizations for themselves. This reminds me of one of my clients in particular who actually went through a similar situation, was in an abusive relationship with a man, left and ended up with a woman and fell in love with this woman. And we were having a conversation on our group call recently about, well, what does that mean? How do I identify? Does that mean I'm a lesbian? Does that mean I'm something else? And so I asked every person on the call, how many of you have a clear idea of how you identify? Raise your hand. Not even my hand went up. And I've only been with women, by the way. However, my identity has even evolved over time. So that's always up to the individual. The second component to that is when we start talking about shame. So if we think about internalized shame, internalized racism, internalized homophobia, just as these things happen in other communities, like if we think about, say, the Black and brown community in general, say the Black community, what do we think when we see people of different shades?
Mm-hmm.
When we think of, maybe socioeconomic status. So you know how that internalized racism starts to spread to other people. So we tend to have those, well, they're not this enough, or they're not that enough, or they're not whatever, quote unquote, enough. Same thing happens in the queer community.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it often, and that's that divide right now. And that's what that is like, my goal is figuring out how we can bring people together to where they're knowing they're accepted no matter where they've been in their life, but it's all about where they are now and where they're going, right? And so when people don't have that community, it's either connecting them to people like she's saying, or I don't fit into the LGBTQ plus community. I'll be honest with you, I've only been with women, and a lot of times I don't fit in, just for other reasons. My wife and I have gone to events, and we both kind of look at each other, and they're like, well, you haven't been to this, and you don't know this person, and we're like, oh, we are not lesbian enough for this group. We have to go.
It's like, we need to take some classes.
Yes. Yeah. And neither of us, I mean, at least my wife has been with men. I'm like, I've never been with a man, so where do I fit in? And that was literally my question in going into my coaching. I was like, where do I fit in? Because I've never been with a man, but I am not lesbian enough for the lesbians. And I've only been with women, but I'm still not like straight enough for the lesbians who used to be married to men. I don't know where I fit in. And
well, it's funny, just because, just a side note about that, because Taryn and I both have stories within the Black community, right, that you mentioned. And just so growing up, I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in a suburb around, all white people, and went to all white high school. And you hear how I talk, and I'm older, I'm 50, so it's different now. But when I was younger, and when I started integrating more and interacting more with other Blacks, it's like, I'm not Black enough because I didn't know this song or this dance, and then I didn't know what to do. And it's just like, but I am Black, and I date, all different races, white, Black, Hispanic, whatever, because I'm looking at the person, right? But it's just like, oh, you're with a white guy, or oh, a Black guy, or oh, and my daughter's father happens to be African American, but he could not have been. Like, it doesn't matter. And my sister-in-law is white, who my brother has been married to for over 30 years, and we love her dearly. So it's like, our family doesn't see that and I'm glad I grew up in that environment. But to your point, it's just like, I didn't fit in because clearly I'm not white, and I don't want to be, but I'm Black, but then I don't know the song or the dance, and I don't know how to do it.
It's still happening. I got it in jobs where my boss was like, you don't know this, you don't know anything about hair. I was like, okay, I'm not Black enough. Got it. Okay,
got it. I'm not lesbian enough.
And I'm not white enough. I'm not white enough for the white people. I'm not Black enough for the Black. That's why I always tell people I just hang out with the international people, because at least I'm accepted over there. So, and I'm not international enough. I'm not from another country, but yeah, we all have it. And it's the same in the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, there's a lot of discrimination even within the community. And we talk about, like, my wife and I will talk about this, how certain people in the community won't accept people who are of trans experience. They won't accept people who are non-binary. If they see, like you mentioned, like they were previously married to the opposite gender and they're coming into the community, they won't accept them. And it's not everybody. And that's the key. It's not everybody. There are people that do accept you for you. It's just finding those people. It's finding the right people.
Yeah.
And so it really does go back to that. But I mean, if she's in the Chicago area, are y'all in Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. There are definitely groups in Chicago. I actually connected with one group recently where it's predominantly women who they call them late to lesbian or late bloomers. And so
I think she called herself she called herself an LOL, late onset lesbian.
Yep.
I was like, okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's a thing.
All right. That's it. Because I was just curious about that and just how that is viewed within the community because it's just like our friend group, like we're all kind of learning about
Yeah.
this as well. And even with our age group, because I'm making sure I'm up on terminology and understanding as best I can because my daughter's 10 years old and she already has some friends that are like there's a little girl that she was in kindergarten with. She's actually my next door neighbor, and now they're going into fifth grade, and she's presenting as a male, but she's still referring to herself as he, she, or not he, she, and the mother still says her and she, but
Yeah.
she looks like a little boy. And Bailey is my daughter. She asked me, she's like, well, why does Ella, she looks like a boy. She's wearing her brother's stuff. And I'm like, well, like we will still love Ella. She's still the same. You guys still like to play soccer together, right? And you still ride your bike and you're in school. And she's like, yeah. And so I'm learning language myself because I know kids talk and I don't want her to learn something off and get it from me when she talks to me about it.
Yeah.
So I'm, I'm learning too. So this is a great platform and I'm glad Taryn has you on because I want to make sure I'm being unbiased or that I don't have any unconscious bias because I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's all just, I'm very open and I'm trying to understand as well. I think one of the other things that confuses me is like the pronouns and the like the they them
Yeah.
there. So especially if someone is presenting as what looks like a female, let's say, right? But they're saying they, them, or they're there. And so I just don't know. And again, I think it goes back to maybe the self identifying as this is how I'm identifying. So, and I don't have to understand it. Obviously, I accept it because people are people. But when my daughter asks, if she hasn't, but if she does ask me, I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. Like, why are they there then? Like, what does that mean? I'm like, I don't know. Because she's like, well, because I could just see her asking because she's very inquisitive if they have, let's say they're developed and they have, breasts or, they
Yeah.
still have all female parts, but then they're they. I don't know what that means.
Britt, are you okay with time? Because
Yeah.
we're
Yep.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Let me hear too. She or he, I don't know, is confused too. So can you go back and
Yeah.
I just lost some. Can you go back and explain that for us if we have a little bit of time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so the way I was explaining it earlier is that
Mm,
right now what we've been conditioned to do is see with only our eyes and stereotype based on that, right? Because our brains want to put people into different boxes really quickly, right?
yeah.
And
Hmm.
this is how I've explained it to, my nieces and nephews when when they're asking these questions too. So we want to see people and we want to be lazy, basically. Our brains are lazy. I'm just going to be honest with you. And it wants to quickly identify and categorize. So that extra step is to say, okay, maybe this person is presenting differently. Maybe they still go by she her pronouns. Maybe they do. However, if I don't know, sometimes it's helpful to ask, like, hey, in her situation, it just depends because she is a child who, I remember kids were asking me all the time, like, wow, you wear basketball shoes, you have this everything was basketball, and my uniform was like oversized. I was like, I'm
Hmm.
not wearing a tight uniform, but I wasn't I wasn't thinking I'm a boy. I was just thinking this is comfortable and I love basketball. I didn't know back then. And sometimes kids don't know, right? And kids ask me all the time if I was gay. I was like, what is that? Like, what? Huh?
Like,
I didn't realize that
what
until like
is
high
that?
school. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know I knew, but it just wasn't like registering with me yet. I grew up very Catholic. I was very,
Yeah.
had a lot of dogma. And so nowadays it's nice because kids are developing more of the language and they're giving us the language, which is
Hmm.
beautiful. And what I'm finding is kids are actually teaching us more than we're teaching them. And so that can be a conversation with your daughter of, sometimes people may look different and language is changing. And some kids may not completely identify as a boy, and sometimes they may not identify as a girl. And so sometimes in when they don't identify as either one, they might just go by they, them, theirs pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
And it may sound funny because you didn't learn this in English class, right? You learned that that's a plural pronoun.
It's a plural, exactly. Yeah.
But if I think about, and this isn't for kids, but if I think about protecting myself as a queer woman, as a lesbian woman, I will never go out and say my wife. I will never go out and use she, her pronouns. I will always use they. That's kind of code. Just in queer language, that's code. So when somebody says, oh, my partner, they work at, at whatever, they're a nurse for a living. Oh, they do this. For me, I start cluing in. Oh, partner, they. Okay. Or who are they with and who are they not? So to me, that's telling me that they're not wanting to out themselves. So it's pretty common in the community to even use that pronoun. So we're protecting ourselves.
So what I learned, Urson, this is on one of the things I learned from Britt in the earlier podcast, earlier episode, was that I thought was really helpful. And Britt, you said at the beginning of the podcast, because you said how you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
My name is Brittany. So